Mayor, just a heads up, our second candidate has not arrived just yet. Creighton's trying to track him down. But he may or may not be here.
All right, the time is 6 o'clock. This is the Cortez City Council work session. Today is Tuesday, June 28th, 2022, and the time is 6 p.m. We'll call this meeting to order, and we'll start with an interview for the open seat on Parks, Recreation, and Forestry Advisory Board. So we'll start with Terry then. All right, so make sure that the microphone is green. And thank you for your patience while it took us a few meetings to get to this.
No problem.
We have at least 4 questions for you, and we'll start with the end with Councilmember DeHaven.
Okay. Hi, good evening. Question number 1 is, please tell us about yourself and why you're interested in being a participant on the advisory board.
Okay, thank you. My name is Terry Paul, and I've been in Cortez for 6 years, but I've been in the Four Corners for 26 years now. I work at Mesa Verde Museum Association. I'm the executive director of the association, which is a nonprofit partner of the park. Before that, I was the park manager and museum director at Edge of the Cedars State Park in Blanding, concurrent with being the park manager at Gooseneck State Park for 15 years, both of them for 15 years at the same time. So I have a pretty good background in parks. I know about maintenance schedules and landscaping and exhibit design and public interaction and campgrounds and all kinds of things. So I think I bring that knowledge to the board. I'm used to working with the board as a nonprofit manager. My bosses are boards, so I know a good board member is somebody who is willing to dedicate their time, educate themselves about the issues confronting the organization, but not be a micromanager. So I will be available when I am needed. Prior to 15 years in Utah, I was a field archaeologist. That's actually my background, is in archaeology, and worked for companies in Ignacio and in Farmington for several years before that. And before that, I ran nonprofits in Colorado. I ran the WinStar Foundation up in the Aspen area for 3 years. Before that was graduate school. So more immediately, a couple years ago, I organized the Friends of Carpenter Natural area. We have just had a month ago our second annual cleanup day. The first one last year drew 26 people, and this year was 27 people. All neighbors, well, not all neighbors of the area, but people who regularly use it. And I think the best thing about Cortez to me is the open space and the parks. And I really feel strongly about being able to help in any way I can with that. And even if I'm not chosen for the board, I intend to continue to volunteer and work on Friends of Carpenter Natural area.
Welcome, Terry. It's good to see you. What do you think the chief functions of the Parks, Recreation, and Forestry Advisory Board are?
Well, I think that the board is there to oversee the programs, and probably also has fiduciary responsibility. That's usually the case with most boards. Of course, this is a city organization, so I'm not sure how true that is. But to support Parks and Rec and to help them with programs that come along. I'm not actually sure what I'll be asked to do, but I'm willing to do whatever is needed. Mm-hmm.
Hey, Terry, thanks for coming. What do you think is the biggest recreation parks issue facing Cortez? I
would imagine maintenance backlog is a big one. and funding to make that happen. Also, I do have quite a bit of experience in grant writing, so perhaps I can be of help in that area as well. Is that right? Would you say it is maintenance backlog? Yeah, that's usually the case. That's certainly the case at Mesa Verde.
All right, so the board meets on the third Friday of each month at 7 a.m. Would you have a problem attending these meetings?
Not at all.
Okay, great. Do council members have any other questions they'd like to ask? All right, that's really all we have for you, so thank you, Terry. We
Okay.
appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Do we have our other candidate here?
Mayor, the other candidate has not appeared,
Okay,
so I don't know if he's going to come a little later. We do have plenty of time in the session
Okay.
this evening. Maybe we move on with the agenda, and if he shows up late and that works, then maybe we can do that. Otherwise, we will put it on the agenda for next time to make your selection.
okay, great, thank you. Okay, so then we'll move on now to Brian Bartlett, Marketing and Communications Manager of Mesa Verde Country, will make a presentation. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Council. Welcome to the new members. Thank you to the returning members who've decided to join our Board of Directors again. We appreciate your participation. It gives us strength and agility, and I cannot thank you enough for your time. I did hand out, prior to the meeting, some slides. You have copies of these in front of you. This is a little different presentation than perhaps what we've done previously. I thank you for your patience as we go through it. Rather than being real tech-heavy or focusing a lot on some of the advertising campaigns that are out there right now, I want you to understand that every day, every week, every month, Mesa Verde Country is promoting this area. We use all the different means of media that we possibly can. We reinforce these advertising campaigns in many, many ways that draw things back to the local business on the street. They draw things back to the local traveler who's standing in your shop, who's standing in your restaurant, who's at your point of sale. They also really help people have a vehicle to have a conversation about where they're headed for their vacation or where they've just come from. And we find that one of the big strengths of Mesa Verde Country, as opposed to other destination areas, is that people have an emotional attachment to this place that is viable, real, and very tangible. And I will share some examples of that for you, if I may. And I'll try to be brief, and again, I thank you for your patience. In the end of April and the 1st of May, Mesa Verde Country was honored to participate at the Denver Travel and Adventure Show. It was April 30th and May 1st up at the Convention Center. We saw about 10,000 attendees, and we were in the Colorado Pavilion's booth, so a real large booth inside that place. This was the first time that we'd had this type of group since the pandemic occurred. So we didn't know what to expect, didn't know who might show up. We were blown away by the response that people had as they approached the pavilion and as they began to learn that we represented Mesa Verde Country. So we're here with Colorado and this big huge booth and all these other parts are represented. People keep coming to the Mesa Verde Country table. I can't tell you how wonderful that is and what a blessing it is to represent such an organization. One of the things that we were also able to utilize to drive that is the Mesa Verde license plate, which is available. It came out right before the pandemic. Unfortunately, the pandemic kind of put the brakes on everything. The reason that we promote this is A, people see this, they're emotionally attached to it, they love it, and they want to have a conversation, so it's a great door opener. And B, we support the Mesa Verde Foundation with all the money that this is generated from. So it's a real great relationship for us. Of course, as you know, the foundation can only spend their money in the park, and they do, but that money has a secondary and a tertiary effect for us, and it's phenomenal. So we're strengthening that partnership and working very diligently to not only repair things from previous times, but to go ahead and make new avenues for us to have success with our partners and to celebrate that success in venues like this. Early in January or February, it might have been February, I had the honor of meeting with the Board of County Commissioners representing Mesa Verde Country to talk about how we could officially request and obtain the money that had already been collected by the state of Colorado from companies like Airbnb or third-party lodging facilities. What basically existed was a situation where the state of Colorado was collecting this tax, and they were doing a great job of collecting it, there's no doubt, but unfortunately, We needed to have a letter of understanding from the county with the state so that we could obtain that money from the state. Otherwise, it was just sitting in a general fund. This is a significant amount of revenue. It's generated from the lodger's tax. It's money that should come back to the county and be spent in the county, but for several years it couldn't be. We worked our way through that. My hat is off to Shaq and Ian in particular. Ian helped us foster this through the process. It is not complete yet because it's very legal and it takes a little while for this to happen, but we do anticipate, I believe by the end of third quarter, definitely by fourth, for this revenue to be freed up and to come into the coffers. I realize that's a county, not the city, but we're the city within the county, and to me that's a big success, and it's something that we're really celebrating because it was something that should have been done a while ago. There just wasn't a vehicle to achieve it, and now that we've achieved it, we're promoting this for some other areas, and some other counties have spoken to us as well to find out how they can do the same thing for their area. So it's nice to be a trendsetter in a positive way. We've also been meeting with local lodgers, local dining establishment retailers, local storefront people, anybody and everybody that has an event or an activity that relates to tourism. And the reason that we've been doing this is because Mesa Verde Country is a dynamic organization. We try to be agile, we try to be nimble. We can't always do that if we don't know what the people that we represent really want us to do. And coming out of the pandemic, there was a little bit of a disconnect, perhaps, between our customer base, our constituents, and what we need to do as an organization to lead people in the right direction and to open up some more revenue opportunities. We're very happy to say that some of the things that we've done may seem little. I want to share just a couple of them. They're anecdotal. I don't want to waste your time, but it's important to me because this is how an organization like Mesa Verde Country is more than just a DMO or a VIB or one of those boring places where people go to get information just when they want to visit, and the rest of the time it doesn't pertain. We pertain, we're germane to the conversation, and these are some ways that we have remained viable just in the past 4 or 5 months. We had a hotel owner in Cortez who had been trying to sell their property for several years. And they tried and tried and tried. They had a beautiful property, very small, very well kept, very well maintained. They were not able to make a connection on a sale. And at a certain point in time, we were able to meet with them and assess the property and do a little bit of a critique for sale. One of the things that we immediately pointed out was that there was an adjacent portion of land to this property that was vacant, and it was for sale. And it was very small, and it was somewhat inexpensive, but it was the key to having access from the front of the property around to the back of the property where the view exists and where the opportunities to recreate exist. Without that little piece of land, there was no legal way for people to access that part of the property. With it, they could. The owners were highly receptive to our suggestions. They acted immediately. Within a very short time after they did this and they acquired the property, they had 3 different purchasers who wanted to buy their hotel. They've since sold and done what they wanted to do, and we're very excited about that because even though that's a very tiny, tiny little detail, it's a way that we helped a lodger in our area. We brought a new lodger into the area with new money and new dreams and inspirations, and we remain viable to that process. So I appreciate you letting me share that with you. There are lots of other opportunities that exist from time to time as well. Sometimes it's something just really silly. About 2 weeks ago, I received a phone call at about 6 o'clock at night from a public relations firm in Chicago. And they had a travel writer who had written an article on the majestic Dude Ranch 5 years ago, the beautiful Dude Ranch up at West Mancos, okay? 5 years ago, beautiful article, tons of photos. The pandemic hit, the article never ran. Now they suddenly had an opening, which is what happens a lot, a last-minute opportunity to run something in their publication, but they couldn't get a hold of the people running the Dude Ranch. They didn't know if they were still open, if they were even viable anymore. So I got a phone call and, of course, have the same contact information that the paper had. Couldn't get a response, so we jumped in the car, drove up to West Mancos, rang the gate, got in, talked to the people, explained what was going on, and within 10 minutes of arriving there, had a big conference call for everybody so that they could go through with this, celebrate the fact that they're still open, enhance the article with the new changes that they've added since the pandemic, and remain viable again to this process and to get that advertising out there. And this is an article that will run in the Chicago Tribune, I believe sometime this coming week. It's supposed to hit around the 4th of July. So that's a big success for us. If they wouldn't have been able to contact us and had proof that the place is still open, they just wouldn't run the article. It's just as simple as that. So even in a very small way, in a binary manner, we were able to help another property have some success. And that's just a good example. Stuff like that happens a lot, not quite that dramatically, but it happens very frequently. In fact, that's why I'm dressed the way I am today, and I apologize. I'm in between events, and I just didn't have time to change, so I hope I don't offend. We're also trying to branch out, as many of you know, especially those that are on the board. We've really worked from a collaborative standpoint to bring people into the construction of the Mesa Verde Travel Planner and Guide. And we no longer consider it just a travel planner. It is now something that's used in market as a guide. That's how we've seen people using it. That's how they like to use it. So it hits all the right bells and whistles to be an inspirational piece at home when they get it and they request it and they're planning a vacation. But at the same time, because of the collaborative effort, when they get in market, they can use it just as nicely as a roadmap or as any type of in-market guide. And it keeps it fresh, it keeps it current. For me, it's a big thing because the people that collaborate on that, the people that advertise in that, are starting to see it be used in their place of business at their point of sale, and they're starting to understand a deeper value to why they advertise with us and why we work on their behalf. So that's another big success that's kind of important to us. Earlier in the season, Chad Wheelhouse had the Career Fest, the Futures Fair, I believe it was called, with the Homegrown Talent Initiative at the high school. Mesa Verde Country was proud to have a table there. We spoke to about 150 different students, young people, and as a result of that, and we did have applications from 3 of our larger hotels that were willing to share applications with us. As a result of that, we were able to deliver about 24 qualified candidates to 3 of our hotels in the market. Of those 24, 6 were hired. As far as I know, as of a week ago, 4 of them were still in positions. In the hospitality industry, that's a win. It may not be for most businesses, but it's a big win for that. And we're very appreciative to the efforts that council, the city, the county, the high school, and everybody else has had to keep the Homegrown Talent Initiative going and to keep the young people focused. One of the big areas that has been important to me personally with Mesa Verde Country is to show our youth there's a line that they can follow to remain successful in market. They don't have to leave this area. They don't have to be embarrassed that they didn't go someplace for a couple years, maybe have an experience out here, over there, what have you. Or conversely, if they did leave market for a while, we're trying to show them that there's a place for their talent and their knowledge right back here at home. We want them to understand that this is a great place to grow. Just like they grew up with a family and had great experiences, it's a great place for them to do the same thing. Hospitality is one of those markets where you can bring people in with minimal education. You can bring them in with minimal knowledge base, as long as they have a desire and a willingness to learn and to work and to grow. Generally speaking, you can grow them into almost any career path that exists within that industry. It gives us a lot of flexibility, and it's really been beneficial because so far we've had about 6 families that have relocated back to the area that used to live here years ago. Of those 6 families that we've spoken with directly, 3 of them have young people that are working in one of the hotels here in town, and that was their key to get a foot back in the community. So for me, that's a big win again. Again, anecdotal, but very much a part of what we do on a daily basis, and I think it benefits us all. That's why I'm sharing. Another thing that we're doing is sponsoring the Mancos Valley River Film Festival with Mancos Valley Resources. That'll be at the new Opera House that got refurbished, and that's going to be in September. We're working with AJ and Korea all the time to support any and all activities and events that we share in common. Third Thursdays, for example, Mesa Verde Country has a booth there now. That's really nice for us because we talk so many times as if we know our local market and we know our local patron. But I have to say, in this aspect of what we do, they get lost quite a bit. We really focus on the regional, the international, that type of traveler. And so what we've learned from being at the first Third Thursday already is that our local base is very strong on travel. They're very strong on bringing people into market. They know the things that are fun to do around here. They're always looking for more things. They also understand the value of tourism in as much as how it drives the economy to a certain point, and they're very sensitive to sustainable, responsible tourism, which is our message and will be for some time. What I'm really impressed with is that the local people that we meet with at the Third Thursday events, for example, are people that share with us information about what they're doing to help people understand when they come here, this is our home. We're thrilled to have you visiting. We want you to have a great time, but we need you to respect it because you're in our house. And that's not talking down, that's just saying, hey, let's protect it, let's keep it safe. I really love that we have so many people in the community who are into that and who work aggressively to protect that. And we're going to continue to be at the third Thursdays through September, and look forward to all of that. It's a great time to connect with a lot of the local people. We also had a meeting a little while ago with the Board of County Commissioners to talk about House Bill 2117, or 22117. That's the reuse of lodgers tax funds, using them for funds other than destination promotion. And that's a big thing and a hot topic right now, and this is something that was primarily brought up from some of the larger tourism communities along the I-70 corridor, where they're overbuilt, they're out of space, they don't have any opportunities for growth because they just can't live in the same market where they work. And obviously, as an employer, I want people to live in my market. It helps with a consistent delivery of service as a business owner. That's a big thing for me. The next thing is, it helps with a connection to the community, and it helps with a long-term commitment. If they're in the area living, hopefully they have designs to not rent, but to go ahead and buy. Hopefully they're going to have a family, they're going to do some of the things. These are people that can really be integral parts of our community, and we need to include them. And so we are trying to be sensitive to the fact that we need to have quality and affordable housing, as everybody in the room has been talking about for quite some time. But we're also sensitive to the fact that in a market like Silverthorne or Vail or Aspen, taking money away from promoting that resource and using it for housing makes a lot of sense, because A, they're dealing with huge money, and B, they are flat out of room. They cannot grow any more activities. They just don't have space for it. It's a little different here, as we may have noticed, and we do need the housing. It's super important to us, but we need to keep the funnel open and keep the faucet running to bring people into this area. Another thing that we benefit from doing that is we grow our base when people relocate to this area. And I know Mesa Verde Country is all about tourism, and it's easy to kind of separate the two, but in reality, when people come down here and have a great time on their vacation, they're more likely to come back and visit again. When they come back that second time, that's usually when they start to talk to us about, what's it like to live here? What are the relocation opportunities? What does a typical day look like, et cetera, et cetera. What I find really exciting about that is not only bringing that talent and that energy into our market, but a lot of these folks are of retirement age, and that's the most beautiful thing in the world for us, because they become volunteers. They become part of the volunteer pool for our area. As you may know, Mesa Verde Country oversees the administration and operation of the Welcome Center. We don't do that with a paid staff. We do that with a team of volunteers. There are currently 15 volunteers that work at the Welcome Center, and that includes the weekends, early in the morning, late at night. These are the people that have recreated in the area over the years. They've had a tremendous experience at the park or at other places, and now they really want to share that information, and they're passionate about our area. They're so passionate that they come to us and say, I have 2 days a week that I'm not doing anything. I'd love to help out. How can I? And they become a volunteer and a great ambassador for the area. So it's a big thing for us, and it really helps us to grow significantly, and I think in the right direction. Of course, as everyone is doing right now, we're working diligently with the Cortez Economic and Community Development Team, participating in meetings, workshops, trying to keep the voice of responsible tourism and champion that, while we also look at ways that we can grow the economy and especially develop the community. You know, I'm so glad that in Cortez, it's not just the economic development team, it's the economic and community development team, because the community part is what gives you durability, that's what gives you a long-term presence in market and allows people to feel part of the process and to be part of the solution, rather than just being in market long enough to identify the problems and then move on. So for us, that's another big deal, and it's something that we focus on. I'm thankful for Rachel Marchbanks and for the whole economic development team, and for Jessica Thurman with the county. We work just as diligently with her. In fact, we're working right now with one of the large hotels in town. We have an opportunity to bring in hopefully a higher class of service and a different level of service to the area. I've been in market for about 20 years. It's a goal that I've had for all that time, but I have to honestly say, as I've said to many of you before privately, at that point in time, our market was not mature enough to really celebrate and sustain that type of a hotel, that type of an operation, that type of a luxury full-service kind of level. We are growing, we're developing, and we're very close to being able to support that, and that's a very important thing for us, because although we never want to become the next Moab, we would like to grow a little bit beyond where we are right now. And as you get hotels that have higher room rates, you can make so much more revenue from the lodgers tax, because the room rate went up, but the number of beds or heads in beds did not have to. So that's another real big benefit for us. We work very closely with the Colorado Tourism Office. We've had the Restart Destinations Grant, the Reimagine Grant, and about 5 other grants, and I'm very happy to say that we just received early word that we've been approved for another grant from the CTO that should land sometime in early August. These are important for us because the funding that we receive from the City of Cortez is extremely important to us. It's a huge part of everything we do every day. It's supplemented a little bit by the money that we receive sometimes from the lodger's tax from the county as well. Aside from that, all the other things that we want to do are really governed by what grants can we obtain, how can we execute, and how can we make these grants work with the goals that we have while still being true to the nature of the grant. So far, we've had tremendous success with that, and it looks like a very good year to continue that way. I have something else to share with the group, and this is important to me. After many years of solitude and dedication, Susan Thomas, who ran Trail of the Ancients Association for many years as a volunteer, completely alone, and she spent 20 to 35 to 40 hours a week running this little byway. It's a very special byway for us because most of it is in Montezuma County. The other part of it is the only archaeological byway in the whole country. We're the only one. So that's kind of a big deal and a nice tie-in with our number one demand generator right up the street. That being the case, we've been working diligently to bring TOTA back under the Mesa Verde Country umbrella. And it came about as a result of a physical situation and a sad situation. But I have to say that the timing was right and our ability to execute on this was just right. So Susan Thomas, out of the graciousness of her heart and because of the reality of the situation that she faces, has gone ahead and worked it out with us to where Mesa Verde Country is now managing and administrating Trail of the Ancients completely. We just got done doing a new corridor management plan, which I have to say, if I had known that was due back when we started negotiating to take TOTA, I may have been a little more hesitant because it was a huge project. Corridor management plan is a tie-in between CDOT, the county, the state, and the federal highway system as well. And so there are a lot of boxes to check, a lot of people to answer to, a lot of narrative that has to be defined and redefined just to get it into the corridor management plan. With a lot of help from the state of Colorado and Julie Klein at the CTO in particular, we've just completed that. We had our readout today with the state. They've approved it, and now we can move on to the next step. And the reason I mention that is because Trail of the Ancients is a scenic byway. It's a small one. It fits into a bigger scheme of scenic byways, which we're all familiar with as the Grand Circle Association, San Juan Skyway, Trail of the Ancients, and about 6 other ones that all kind of meld together. If you saw this on a map, you would have a big circle going through Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico, and right in the dead center would be Cortez. So geographically, we're kind of in a nice spot for that. The reason I mention this is that because of the success that we've had with Trail of the Ancients, there are a lot of folks with the Grand Circle Association who feel that the association could be run more efficiently and more effectively if it were brought under the umbrella of an existing organization. Right now, it's a little bit like a quarterly junket club. Everybody gets together for a couple days and has their fun and explores the area, which is great and which is important, but the real work's not getting done. It needs to be handled in a more administrative and efficient manner. So we are looking at the pros and cons of possibly throwing our hat in the ring to go ahead and bring Grand Circle Association under the Mesa Verde Country umbrella. That would bring a tremendous amount of funding with it, so please don't be alarmed. That would bring 100% funding for that organization plus about an extra 5% that could be used for ancillary projects. So that could be good news. It is a tremendous amount of work, and there are some people with the Grand Circle Association who've dedicated large portions of their lives to the success of that organization. I'm not sure that they're willing to part with it at this point in time, but stay tuned and we'll let you know, and hopefully something will be coming from that. Just 1 or 2 more quick things and I'll wrap up here. I'm very honored to say that as of about 4 o'clock this afternoon, I have been allowed a seat on the Cortez Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors, and we're going through the process right now of hiring a new executive director. We have a new mindset with the chamber. We know what we need to do. We definitely know what not to do, and we're very focused on bringing people back into the fold and getting people excited about being part of the chamber again, not because we say so, but because it makes sense and we can demonstrate to people why it's so important. So this is the first step into that process, and again, as I say, very honored to be a part of that board. It's a great, energetic group of people, and we really want to make this the place place that we know it can be by including all the partners at the table that should be at the table to be effective with our goals. So that's another success that we're pretty excited about. And I guess the last one that I wanted to share with you, if I may, is on September 17th, we have the big fly-in at the airport. And Jeremy, the airport manager, has worked diligently on this. He did a great job last year and did most of it by himself. This year, I didn't want to see him go through that again, and he's been wonderful about sharing a lot of the work and a lot of the tasks. Mesa Verde Country has brought in public relations. We're giving carte blanche to Jeremy. Anything he wants to publicize, anything he wants to get out there, we're doing it on our dime, not on his. We're trying to get that motivation going and make sure that we're saturating the marketplace with this information. And we're also, specifically, Mesa Verde Country is going to handle the volunteer segment of this event. So we're looking for 8 volunteers on September 17th, 4 for a morning shift and 4 for an afternoon shift, to help us make this a big, huge success in the manner that we know that we can. So I'm just throwing that out there. If people know or want to volunteer or have friends who may want to be involved, please have them contact Mesa Verde Country, and we'll be happy to get them into that mix. And on another step beyond that, this is exactly the type of thing that we need to remain focused on. This is bringing fresh money, fresh experiences, and fresh people into our market, and that's how we're going to survive. That's how we're going to become viable again for the next generation. We always remind ourselves inside the office, the young people that we see visiting today with their grandparents, those are the people that are going to be bringing their families tomorrow. And so that experience and that quality of experience needs to be up here, and it needs to remain up here no matter what the age group, no matter what the demographic, no matter where they come from or what the expectation is. The last part of that is just to say that, excuse me, the Welcome Center is tremendously impacted in a positive way by the fact that Canyons of the Ancients National Monument Museum is open consistently now. That has helped us tremendously. As you probably know, the park is still experiencing some issues with the road closures, with the construction, and with the HVAC issues, among many other issues inside the park, and that's just the way it goes. We know that's the big demand generator. That's why people come here. We have to make sure they can get into the park at least a little bit, and they can, but we need to fill in those other couple of days that they were planning on spending in the park with stuff that they can do around here. To answer that, we've worked very closely with a lot of our organizations, and one thing that we did learn over the course of the past year or so is that we've about saturated the mountain biking market in this area. It's a phenomenal, phenomenal opportunity, and we're thrilled that we have it, but from a traveler standpoint, they are feeling saturated when they come down here. They're having a level of experience with other riders that they almost have on the Front Range. I know that's hard to believe, but I've been to the Front Range and seen that and seen what we have down here in many of our areas, and it is similar. Nothing wrong with that, but that's not an avenue to the future in the long term for us. So we're starting to change message a little bit, trying to focus on some other things. And one thing we need is the help of council and citizens and anybody else within the sound of my voice, because what people are telling us is they are looking for experiential activities, things that they can participate in. They love to come down and see the park and see the dwellings and see the beautiful geography and the landscape, but they also want to get out and ride the zip line. They want to get out and climb some rocks. They want to ski. They want to snowshoe. Our focus right now is big on the winter season, and we are growing that tremendously. We have a lot of people in our market who want to ski and Telluride in the morning and climb rocks in Mesa Verde Country in the afternoon. Okay, we can do that. We'll make it happen, but that's just a small representation of what people are looking for. They're branching out. They're pushing envelopes in a lot of directions. So as mundane as it may sound, things like miniature golf, things like a zip line, things like the bowling alley, things that give people a chance to go and do retro activities that they no longer do in some of the primary markets, that's what we're here for, and we can do that. We can facilitate that. So that's something to think about and something that I wanted to bring to the attention of council. The last thing that I would say is that Mesa Verde Country remains a dynamic organization. We're here to serve you. We're here to serve the people that come to this area, and we're here to make sure that our message is consistent, tight, and spot on. If you see opportunities or chances for us to do a better job, or places that you don't see us in market and that you'd like us to have a presence, please let us know. We're very dynamic. We're very nimble. We're ready to rock on it. Just please point that out. There's nothing set in stone about the way that we interact with our community, and we want to grow that, and we want to bring the public more into that, not just through the Welcome Center, but through Mesa Verde Country as well. I really appreciate your time. I'm sorry to go on so long, and I thank you for your indulgence. Did you have any questions?
Well, thank you, Brian, so much for that
Yes, ma'am, Rachel.
detailed presentation. Do any council members have questions for Brian?
Not a question, but more of like a, I don't know, statement. Also on September 17th is the Veterans Stand Down event,
Yes,
and I
ma'am.
wonder if there's an opportunity for cross-pollination of promoting.
Absolutely, and thank you for mentioning that, Councilwoman. I
Yep.
appreciate that very much. We are exploring those avenues, and if there are other areas like that that exist, please let me know. But that's a perfect tie-in, and I want to have more than 8 volunteers. I'd like to show up with 16, so I appreciate that very much.
So the Ride of the Ancients then is July 9th?
July 9th, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, and so then, is that money then gonna help?
That's going to help Trail of the Ancients, but it's going to help the organizations that are already part of that. We're not trying to move that money or change that money at all. Diane McBride is primarily responsible for that, and she's
Okay.
doing a phenomenal job. It will be on July 9th, and the membership is getting close to being full, so there's still time to sign up, but it's getting close. And that is a tremendous signature event for TOTA because it's been run so well previously, and this year they added the family component, so a mother and a daughter could ride the event together, a son and a father. It's a specific part of the race, and it's really going to generate some competitiveness and some family dynamics there and give people a great reason to come back year over year. So we're excited about that, but all of that is a result of Diane McBride.
Okay.
Thanks, Brian. I was just wondering if you guys have had any success partnering with our tribal nations that border us, and particularly like the Ute Mountain Tribal Park.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
I know things haven't been running because of COVID, but I think they're back up and running now.
And thank you very much for that question. They are back up and running. We've just directed a multitude of people that way in the last 14 days. The word that we've gotten back from the people that participated was it was phenomenal. They didn't know, or they would have done it sooner. We're going to focus on promoting that more now that we're post-pandemic, and we believe that the consistency of the operation will exist a little bit stronger than it had in the past. We'll be able to do that responsibly and in a way that everybody gets excited about. So that's a big part of it. It's not just that location. There are a lot of different locations. And yes, to answer your question, we work with all the tribal lands, with all the tribal people, and we really try to keep that as part of the conversation. As we like to point out to people, if it weren't for that connection, none of us would be here right now having this conversation. So it's a big thing for us. But thank you.
Well, thank you again. Really appreciate you being here, Brian.
Thank
And
you.
excited for what Mesa Verde Country's doing.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your support.
Okay, Creighton, do we have our other candidate here yet? Okay. All right, we'll move on to D on the workshop agenda for presentation on AV systems for the council chambers.
Yeah, we might need to call IT. There we go. Think we could? Honorable Mayor, City Council, I'll enlighten you with a little presentation and then we can move on to the memo and any questions that you may have. So we've all been aware that the current problems within this room that we've all been aware of and we've all experienced. The current system we have is pretty much on life support. IT, city staff, keeps it going on a daily to be able to run these meetings or any functions in this room. Most of the equipment that is in here that runs these meetings is from the old city hall. It's kind of a hodgepodge of all the equipment. Three different types of equipment that's in that room. It's not designed to or compatible with each other, we make it work. There's no on-call support that we can call to help us with that. We pretty much do all of that on our own every time. Pretty much all the features that you guys see, reaching out to the public, all this up here is all done manually, either by Vicki or somebody in IT staff. Most of these problems really became prevalent in 2019 when the pandemic hit. We're always at risk every day of a permanent failure of the systems that pretty much run this room and reach out to the community. Some of our options that we've come up with as staff. We can muddle through with the current system at a minimal cost, but we've witnessed the equipment failures at almost every meeting recently. We can all remember at least one fairly recently. Should the current system fail, what can we expect? We could go back to paper, no live streams, no video recordings. We could do the audio or just not have anything on YouTube at all. Not meeting community expectations and not adhering to the current or best practices. Risk damaging our public trust. New systems that could meet our current requirements for the future needs. So the steps we've taken for this presentation, we underwent an RFP process for research of findings, looked for competitive bids for what or who is available to provide a service for this facility. We compared costs, looked for one provider with a fully integrated and a support system that is suitable for our needs. They could help us plan for future improvements while keep us current with industry standards. Proposed new system features that we've been looking at: closed captioning, ADA accessibility, translation, preferably to Spanish, possibility other languages, virtual attendance, which we always have trouble with whenever we have to have somebody try to zoom in or reach out without having them present. Both for city council guests, and it's all web-based. Meeting management software for the mayor and council. Auto-tracking cameras so that as you speak, the camera just zooms in on you. Nobody has to manually do it. Auto meeting minutes. With the closed captioning, that's actually written in a log file in the software. All you got to do is download it. That would help out the clerk immensely. Integration for the other city needs. As this room is being used, we could, any other meeting that's potentially used in this room, whether it's for planning and zoning, any offshoot that we have consistently in this room that we're asked to provide some sort of electronics that's needed to support that meeting. Expansion into the Mesa Verde room, the training room, and the new council chambers that's supposed to be built to the planned to be built to the south wall of this room. Also, assistance for the hearing impaired, both for the public and for anybody in this room. So, with the input from council, staff is offering this proposal for your consideration, which will correct our existing audio and visual issues. The price breakdown for the proposal that we've set is hardware at $153,199.56. The installation and the software would be $57,453.08. That's for the first year, and then every year after that for the annual recurring costs of $9,667 per year. The finance director and the city manager are looking for guidance from city council to determine if this should be added to the mid-year budget adjustment or another budget process. And I'll take any questions you have.
Can you go back 2 slides? So when you say virtual attendance for council and guests, web-based, is that is that like separate from like other like video conferencing software, or is it embedded in the software that you're?
It's embedded in the software that we would be purchasing, and we would be able to conduct. The best way to explain it is, you remember how through 2019, 2020, we had the tables with all the cameras all over this room to set up the hybrid meetings? All of that sustainability is built into the software and the package that we're looking at.
Okay.
So whether council is at home or in this chambers, if the need arises, heaven forbid it doesn't happen again, but if the need arises, we're armed for that scenario.
Yeah, I guess my question is more along the lines of, okay, so you have Zoom, you have, you know, WebEx and stuff like that. Does it have its own branded like video conferencing software, or are you just referencing we would be able to use Zoom and stuff like that?
They actually use a Teams platform, which is similar to our Avaya platform, and to not get into tech speak, Google for the translation portion of it would be involved in that, and it helps with the Zoom or the video outreach to the community and for council.
Okay, so Microsoft Teams.
Microsoft Teams.
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Okay. What's the lifespan of this type of equipment typically?
Well, so we don't get into this position again where we have to make a decision, which we've had to face so many times, and I've talked about this before. I'd like to set it on probably like a 7 to 10 year renew schedule, like we are with all of the other electronic equipment throughout the city, like we're trying to set dispatch up with, like we have all of our IT systems on. Every 7 years, we set up a buyback program with Dell, or with any provider. I forgot to ask this provider if they do a buyback, but I can ask about that. But we just try to refresh the hardware and keep it rolling. And that way we don't get to a point to where, oh my God, what do we do?
So my biggest concern, I think, when I opened this and read basically the slide with the hardware costs and all that stuff is...
That one?
That one, yeah, absolutely, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's a lot of money, and it's a lot of money right now. I think that in the past, and kind of like what one of the normal sort of written or unwritten protocols around an expense this large is that we would typically look at it during the budget season when we're looking at the whole picture. And I know that, you know, in mid-year we do budget revisions, but I feel like given the state of the economy, you know, we're rapidly moving from inflation to recession, I think, in my opinion. That's happening. Given that sales tax was down last month, given that, you know, even the marijuana outlets have been down. Really the only thing that was up was the lodger's tax, which I would, you know, expect. And we, you know, if you've been up to Mesa Verde in the last couple of months, you could see that it's going to be up for a while, I think. So that's my biggest, and I know you guys went through a lot of effort with RFPs and comparing costs and all the different features and things like that, but it's just my personal opinion that right now is not the time, but I would personally be more open to this or looking at it during the normal annual budget process. That's my biggest concern. So if I had a vote, I would say my vote would be yes, and we need to wait and look at it during the annual budget process. So it would be no, not right now, in my opinion.
Right. Actually, I'm going to have to defer that to answer that question and defer to Drew to Kelly on that one, if you guys could help me out.
Yeah, council member, thank you for that question, Mayor and council. We have really struggled with this. We know this number is huge. We are also up against the fact that should we even take this to council with the mid-year adjustment and get it approved and everything, it's going to be 6 to 8 months before delivery, as could be expected. So I was looking at more kind of a hybrid version of this, and as we've talked with, together as staff, how do we handle this? And we're trying not to put council in a bad position. We feel like we're all in a bad position because of, the situation in here. We're just trying to do our best to somehow address it. One of those things would be to perhaps include that in the mid-year adjustment, but that would only just be to cover us legally to make that order, as it were. But the reality is, we're probably not going to expend that this year, this budget year, and therefore we can put it into the regular budget for next year and just kind of treat it like we did with the water treatment, or with the water tanks, where we kind of doubled up. We actually double budgeted, and we didn't know where that was going to fall, and that's kind of what we're falling in this one. We don't know where that's going to fall in the way of crossing the calendar years or the fiscal year. So, we are open to anything the council tells us. We certainly understand the position. I understand the numbers as they are and the sales tax and so on, but we feel like this is something that we should put before you to at least get council input on where you feel we should go. We've agonized over this as well. In fact, we've delayed it a lot longer than I would have hoped, just for that reason.
I'm also not certain if, go ahead, David, you go first.
Is this, these figures, is this something that we can pay out over a certain period of time? Is that the plan, or is that optional? How are we, are there options on how we could pay for this?
It would be, the way they broke it down in the bid is it would be 25% at stages, and then we would withhold until the project is completed. We would withhold, I think it was 15-20% we agreed upon with the company until everything was completely signed off on. So I guess the 216 roughly divided by 4 would be the easiest way to explain that, sir.
And what period of time are we talking about between the initial and the follow-up?
From the time we order, like if we approve this tonight, and I go tell these guys to order their hardware right now is anywhere from 5 to 6 months out because of the delays of shipping that's going on across the nation right now. So when all the hardware arrives, we pay the first 25%. That's why doing what Drew said would be a good idea, to look at it this year as well as work it into the budget with going with it.
I would also have some concern if we were to wait and then rebid and have the cost of this technology shoot up tremendously, just considering like current state of the world and where materials are coming from, and it could be a concern where this price will be, considered reasonable now, but it wouldn't look the same in the next 6 months.
For technology costs, so the laptops we purchased in February and paid, I think, $1,500 per laptop, something like that. That same laptop, I looked at the quotes. I had Brad get quotes for laptops for a couple of employees with the city, and that same laptop is now $2,500. So exponentially, you could, if you don't order it now, if we don't do it now, it's honestly, I can't give you the exact answer to that because I don't know. It could go up a lot more, it could go up a little bit, but that's the chance we'll take if we speculate and not.
I guess, yeah, what are the chances of it going down? Because is that what you're implying, Matt? If there's a recession, that things will get cheaper, or
No, my concern is.
is it how much money we have?
Absolutely, it's with the amount right now, given the economic environment, given, I think, how it would come across to the public that, oh, look what, the city just did. And I know that we've talked, or, in the last meeting, we talked a little bit about helping the county with the project down by the airport, but to me, those are a couple of different things. That's an expensive one too, but it's about public safety first and foremost. And so, and not that the system doesn't need to be upgraded, it absolutely does. I mean, I'm here, I know, I see it, but I just feel strongly that now's just not the time to do it. And, and I hate to say it, like, I watch all the school board meetings and they're horrible because they're on YouTube and the sound is bad and the video is bad and all that, but, they make it work. I think, to me, it just, right now is not the time, is what I'll kind of leave it at. I think that normally when we go through the budget process, something that has this much of a price tag on it would be a part of that process and not a part of a mid-year adjustment. We don't. I mean, there's a scale, and this is off the charts in terms of that scale, in my opinion. But I'm open to, what other folks on council are saying, but that's just where I'm at.
I think my thought on this is it seems like it's more of almost an emergency or necessity situation where we've seen the system go down, it's unreliable, and we don't know how long it will last, and thus it would warrant being put into the mid-year review. I also feel that having a good system is important for public transparency. I really think if people can watch our meetings or even participate virtually, or we can participate virtually, it's only going to strengthen our transparency in the long run. So I would fear if we don't move forward that we may lose our system and be patchworking things together that will not make us seem as transparent to the public.
I think it's a catch-22. I think we desperately need an upgrade. I don't know. Paying for it will be challenging. But in terms of things that we need, I think that's one of the things that we desperately need.
In terms of where the money comes from, is this something we could use ARPA funds, or would it be general fund, or?
I'll defer to Kelly on that one.
That's a great question. So this project wouldn't necessarily, we wouldn't be able to pay for that out of our ARPA funding because it wasn't a project that we had already in the works. It would be considered a new project with the ARPA funding. It's a possibility that we could look for other grant avenues, but we do also have money in the general fund that we could pay for this with. If you remember, as we went through the 2022 budget, at the end of that, there was a sizable surplus in the general fund because of the increase of revenues that we had, and we also reduced expenses by quite a bit in 2022. So we have options other than ARPA funding.
How's it going? I mean, one of my thoughts too was sort of regarding, we've talked time and again about paying off some of our debts early, and I think, almost $250,000 would be a nice chunk of money towards one of those. Have we made any progress on those, paying off those debts early?
Currently, we don't have any of those debts paid off yet. As we go into our '23 budget process, that's one of the things that Drew and I have talked about, is how to build that into the budget so that we can reduce that debt, particularly in our water fund and with our hydro plant that we have. So that will definitely be a larger discussion in our '23 budget.
I guess I see this as more of a like necessity expense than luxury, because clearly this purchase has been put off and it's just going to get more expensive. And then it sounds like there is a benefit that obviously we're not going to be writing this check tomorrow.
No.
So.
And this, with the way these guys claim that their supply lines are, it's gonna take time. I mean,
I think one of the things too is, as we discussed this and we talked about the supply chain issues that we're facing, if we wait until we have the '23 budget passed and we order then, number one, how much more expensive is that equipment gonna be, and how much longer is that supply chain gonna take for us to get it? I'd hate for us to wait until January of '23 to order and then find out, well, now the expected wait time is 8 months instead of 6 months. And all the while, we have our fingers crossed that this system doesn't die completely in the meantime.
and to kind of add to that, what we're actually going through right now, we're still waiting on 3 switches that we ordered 12 months ago this month from Cisco. And they're telling people they're a minimum of 12 to 14 months out.
So are there any leasing options where there wouldn't be as large of hardware cost up front to us, even if it was a little more per year? I think something like that could be beneficial, just with hardware and software changes over time. And the other question I had is just about the kind of the warrantying of it. I mean, if there's a 5-year or 7-year or 10-year warranty on the equipment, and we have an annual support contract, and it's basically, yes, we're spending this $216,000, but we know the system's going to run for a decade before we have to spend, other than the annual maintenance contract on it, more to redo it. That would be one thing. But I would definitely have a concern if we had a large expenditure up front, and then in 3 years there's issues, and we're having to have a later counselor are having to have this conversation again after a large expenditure.
With the yearly, the annual update, or the $9,000, if we do run into that, then the provider is on the hook to make it right. From the hardware, the software, the whole package.
Through a 10-year agreement?
For however long we pay the yearly support.
Okay.
From what I'm reading, if we don't buy it in advance, the technical support, then every year it may go up, and they don't say how much it may go up. It's ambiguous, so they could say this 9,000 is now 15,000. The 15,000 the next year could be 20,000. So our prices are definitely going to go up. If they say it could, it will. So if we don't pay in advance, it's going to be more money every year.
What they're trying to do is to make sure that you pay and stay with them on a year to year, so you don't get behind with that annual payments. So if you fall out of, I guess, the grace period, like with Dell, same thing. We do go through that exact same thing right now. If we don't pay for 3 months, they take us off the books. We decide, we need that support. It's an additional 13 to 15% to re-up that support.
Yeah, the one sentence I'm reading here, it says, when not purchased up front, annual service renewals will be offered each year, and the renewal cost typically increase each year.
Right.
I haven't said where I stood on the matter. I'm kind of like Councilman Kiefhofer. I believe that's a lot of money. It's something we want, it's something we need, but is it something we have to have? I want a brand-new truck. I really need a brand-new truck, but can I afford the brand-new truck? And that's what the council, I think, has to look at.
When are you looking for a decision by?
Well, let me answer that one, Mayor. We are not asking for a decision in this venue. What we would do is include it with the mid-year budget adjustment, that request. But I'm seeking guidance on whether or not to even include that. And I'm trying to be very, very careful here, Council. I am not trying to offer you a Hobson's choice where, you know, either take our suggestion or the house is going to burn down sort of thing. But, you know, we are trying to provide the facts and what you can expect, whether, you know, we do this or not. But that's what we're looking for is, you know, should we even include it? And then that would have to take place next month.
So since there is a little bit of like division, Madam Mayor, I'm wondering if we should do a straw poll after everyone's done with their questions to see whether or not we just bring it forward in the future.
Yeah, is that something we can do, Linda?
Mike, can you help us with that one?
We've done in the past. It's not a commitment to vote that way in the future. It's just get an opinion rather than straight yes or no.
Okay, I think that's a great idea, Matt, then. I guess how do we do that? Okay.
Yeah, I don't know that we should do a roll call.
You would do a roll call, but you might start on the left
Yeah.
or the right.
Well, do we have any more questions or discussion before we take a poll? Okay, David, do you want to start us out?
Actually, I do have a question,
Oh, yeah.
really quick,
Go
sorry. So, let's say the majority of council says that we should move forward with it to include it in the mid-year adjustment. That's kind of a package deal, right? Like we're accepting the whole adjustment. We're not calling this out separately, nor will there be an opportunity to vote on it separately down the line. I guess what I was suggesting is that a straw poll, at least we could say, do we want to move forward with it? But if it's going to be, you know, an all or nothing, it's either, you know, part of the mid-year adjustment or, you know, it's not a separate thing, right?
Right. And also the mid-year budget adjustment has line items on there that are up for discussion. For example, one of the items on there is equipment failure at the outdoor pool with the heater. So there's different items on there that are deemed as critical need, but they are always up for discussion and at the council's will. So it's not an all or nothing type of situation.
So when we vote, though, we would vote for the mid-year adjustment, and then we'd have a comment period, or we could weigh in on individual things? Is that how that would work?
We could certainly do that. We could absolutely bring forward the mid-year adjustment as a work session item for discussion. In the past, we've done that as a ordinance process, so there would be a first reading, public comment, second reading before final approval, but we could definitely alter that to whatever suits the council's needs best.
How soon are you planning on bringing the mid-year adjustment?
So I'd hope to have it on the next on the next agenda or move it to the next workshop, but we could certainly address that also at the end of July if you'd all like a little more time to consider options for this particular item. We could do that at either.
Right. I think what we could do, Council, is I think we would just bring it forth as an agenda item next meeting, that this is our proposal, and you can either accept or reject that and tell us to come back with an ordinance. And at that time, the second meeting in July, we would come back with the first, or with the ordinance for the first reading. At that point, you know, the process is started. But it does give you a meeting to basically line item veto, and I don't know, I can't believe I'm actually saying that, but that's essentially what it would be, to veto some of that off of there, and then tell us what your final motion is on what that would be to bring, for us to bring you an ordinance. And then at that point, we would do that second meeting in July.
Yeah, because I feel like we need more time to kind of mull this over, discuss it, and decide. So I don't want the entire mid-year adjustment to be compromised because we may not want one thing on it, but we do want the others.
Yeah. And I think that process would work if at the next meeting, there's a presentation of the mid-year adjustment, and then we, the council, maybe through a motion process, can say, we want to move forward with projects X and Y, but not Z, then it moves to the ordinance process. I think that would work. That would work well.
Correct, and I think that does a little better at putting in front of the public as well. It gives one more chance and at seeing that. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, then I'd say let's move forward with the consideration of this then.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor and Council. We appreciate your time and certainly does the input and discussion.
Yeah, thank you everyone for comments.
Thank you, Mayor, Council.
Thank you guys. Okay, we're moving on to general council discussion. Do any council members have a topic they'd like to bring up?
Yes, Mayor. I put at each of your spots a little doodad. Linda, I can give you one if you need it for the record. In one of the many other hats that I wear in my other work, I participate on the Early Childhood Education Expansion Action Team, and I just wanted to bring this to council just to chat about. I don't know if we really have like, I'm just want to chat about it. I'm not really bringing any solutions or anything for discussion, but the state of Colorado will be having universal pre-K coming in the fall of 2023, and this will allow 4-year-olds to attend free childcare for 10 hours a week. And in Montezuma County, we have a severe lack of childcare. This information here that's provided is a couple years old. I think it was actually from 2019. The source, I think, is actually dissolved by this point, but I know that MEC has started, the Montelores Early Childhood Council has started taking on information, but I also don't think that it's terribly far off in terms of numbers when it comes to childcare in Montezuma County. So we have a severe lack of 0 to 12 months, so newborn, infant childcare slots. And I just wanted to bring this to council because I think it's really important that we think about if there's any way that we can support childcare and I guess fostering it in our community. I think that will help us, honestly, in the realm of like community and economic development. We had 3 or so months ago, we had Laura Lewis Marchino come here and tell us that basically we don't have enough young people to replace our workforce. Like, it's starting to become a major issue. And I think we as council, as elected officials in the community, should be trying to create a community that is family friendly. So I just wanted to bring this to council's attention. I said that I would. And I'm curious to hear, has anybody else heard this issue? I know that, oh my God, I'm like spacing right now. I'm just gonna let other people talk. My brain's spaced.
Yeah, I've also heard that this is a major issue in our area, getting childcare, and I agree that if we're going to continue to have a growing community, we need to attract and retain families.
I think the cost of childcare too is a big issue when it costs more than people are making at work, and so one, parent has to decide to leave the workforce to raise their children. So thanks, Arlena, for sharing this, or Councilmember, or Mayor Pro Tem Yazzie.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to share that with you all.
I'd like to weigh in. I think this is probably one of the most important issues that we have to deal with. And from what I've read, this would be a quantum leap in the right direction.
I certainly wish it was more hours, but when I think about our community here, it's, we just simply don't have the slots to take on the number of children that we have in the community for that to even be meaningful. There's a gap of 919 slots that we would need to support the children in our community. And mind, not every child's going to be going to childcare, but I think that when it comes to, a thriving childhood, being in a safe environment, not just, going to a relative or a parent's friend's house where they're just there and not actually engaging, or maybe they're in an unsafe, they could be potentially in an unsafe environment. I think if there's anything we can do as elected officials, if there's some sort of policy that we could take, that we should, because it obviously affects us down the line.
I guess that is Rachel Marchbanks here, because that kind of gets into a land use issue too. Like, do we allow childcare in all zonings? Is that something we can add to our list of when we update the land use code?
We can certainly explore that, yeah, and that only makes sense, but yes, absolutely.
Okay, and then also, like, is there fees that we collect from licenses that we could look at too, or just, I don't know the other ways that we can kind of alleviate or help streamline or help more people become licensed family childcare.
Yeah, I don't think we license anybody like
Okay.
that. That would be through the state or,
Okay.
so.
Yeah, and I'll just add real quick too, there's still free courses for ECE 101 and 103 that are being provided by the state, and that can get you a mini certificate to be a child care provider through Pueblo Community College. So folks might as well take advantage of it while it is free. And we desperately need child care providers too.
Thanks, Arlena. Do we have any other topics that council would like to bring up?
I wanted to bring up the petition about the rec center hours that was brought up at our last meeting, which I see Creighton has given us a letter at the beginning, and how we have a staffing shortage. And I was just wondering if there was if we had any creative ideas of supporting, finding more staff, publicizing that, or getting information out to the high schools, and if we could use our social media page to spread sort of this information of how many staffing shortages we have, so that maybe there's more community understanding.
So Jim Mimiaga from the Journal did reach out to me, and I think he reached out to Creighton, so he is going to put an article out about our staffing shortages, and hopefully that will kind of help spread the word. I guess another idea would be talking to Chad Wheelis with the Homegrown Talent Initiative at the high school. because he works with students about career paths and maybe seeing if they have jobs, so, but that is a good idea. So what are the other creative ways to kind of find applicants and help with our staff issues?
Do we think that, like, the amount of pay is a big issue with the recruiting staff, or what are the main setbacks? I
All
guess
of it.
All of it?
Yeah, we're competing with McDonald's. I mean, we're,
Right.
all over the place. It's really difficult. And all that you're talking about, we're doing and have done.
Yeah.
And if there's a better idea out there, we're all ears, but everybody's suffering for staff. Everybody is. I'm actually going to be addressing this partially in my report at the regular council meeting as well. But yeah, we're kind of baffled. Creighton, do you have more input?
Thank you, Creighton.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Drew and I actually have time scheduled on Thursday. I've been working on for the last several weeks a recruitment and retention plan. It's kind of loosely referred to in that message that you're reading there. Some of the things that we're talking about are some potential recruitment, sign-on bonuses for part-time employees, referral bonuses, and season-long incentives. Pay is part of the issue, but the other part of the issue, and I know all of you that hire people are dealing with the same thing. There's more jobs than there are people that want to work right now. So that puts us in a real tight spot. And pay ends up being the item that people see, but that's not always the primary issue. It might be part of an issue. The governor did just come out with a grant program to incentivize lifeguards, which we have put in our application. We'll be going through that program. We'll have some funds available specifically for lifeguards and hope that that might help. But as you see in that message, that's only half of my issue. The other half of my issue is keeping the rec center open and running, in which most of that is entry-level positions. So I've met with our team. We've come up with some creative options. We think that are creative options. I'll be presenting them to Drew for his thoughts and consideration, and if everything goes well, then we'll start implementing those. But admittedly, we're probably through most of the summer before anything significant starts really helping us out. Really, at this point, I'm looking at trying to set us up for a more positive fall and not so much worrying about summer at this point.
What about rebranding positions as like internships? I don't know if like, I don't know.
Part of what I'm going to be proposing to Manager Sanders is coming up with a bit of a tiered system for some of our positions, so that once someone gets qualified, they move into a new tier, which then allows them to get paid a little bit more. So it's a kind of a similar but different concept. Internships really work for, frankly, a class of positions that we don't have right now in our system, and that's part of our issue that we need to work on a little bit more longer term. That's a goal I have for next year, is to put in place a kind of an entry-level, semi-professional level position. In the recreation field, it's called a program coordinator level position. That's the ideal spot for an intern. It's someone who's gone through a little bit of college. They know enough that they could be helpful in developing programs for us and running programs. But that right now isn't the class that we have in our system right now. We basically go from supervisory class to entry level, and there isn't much of an in-between.
With our current staff that we have, would people be amenable, and would it be possible to do more of like a variety of hours, like daytime hours, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, evening, whatever?
At this point, we'll take whatever we can get.
Okay.
We have some of our, actually one of our rec receptionists is typically a morning person, and we've told her that we'll take whatever she's willing to give us. So she's right now doing split shifts. She comes in the morning, she comes in the evening, just to keep us going.
Yeah.
But I think to your point, Councilmember DeHaven, we are looking at, one of the items that I found that we need to clarify is what exactly the spot is we're trying to fill, whether that is a morning shift or an evening shift or a weekend shift, and being clear on the posting so that as we're recruiting, the folks that are applying know what our needs are.
What I've heard from the public is those evening hours are what's missing for most people, is, you know, you get off work at 5 and the pool isn't open or the rec center isn't open long enough for people, you know, after work to be able to utilize the facilities.
I've heard the same thing. I understand.
Well, thank you, Corinne.
So I think maybe just a final statement I have. The petition, you know, over 200 people applied. I would love if I could get 15 of those folks come in and put in an application for us. It doesn't have to be full-time work. We'll take whatever hours they're willing to give us to work in our rec center. You know, that's 250, 15, that's less than 10% of those folks that signed an application, or signed that petition. If they would come and work for us, that would solve a large part of our problem.
Did you ask the person who was gathering the signatures to go back and ask all the people he petitioned to see if they might be interested?
I have one of our City Hall staff members and one of our rec center staff members have talked to that gentleman. I have it scheduled by the end of this week to follow up and have us sit down with him and kind of talk through some of the issues.
Well, and all the people who signed it obviously want to use the rec center. Is there a benefit if we work for the rec center? Do you get a free pass or do you get a discount?
At this point, there is an employee discount. One of the things I'm proposing to Manager Sanders is a different tier for those folks that are seasonal employees.
Okay,
That would have access to our facilities.
great. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate it and we look forward to hearing an update.
Sure.
All right, any last topics people would like to bring up? Okay, well then I'll move to, well, I guess we'll adjourn this meeting and we'll start the regular meeting in about 5 minutes. Thank you.